In this video tutorial, we will be using the Provider State Management Helper package to manage our app states. We will be looking at the many different provider types using a very simple application. So what is provider? Provider is, as I stated at the beginning, is a state management helper package that is used to separate the application state from the user interface and more. So our simple application is a text and a slider application where we use the slider widget to increase our text font size, as you can see. So this app is built using a stateful widget where we update our class field text size using the setState method. So every time the setState method is called, the application is built again so that it can reflect the new state change. So let's use a provider instead of a setState widget. For this, we will look at the most basic provider widget type called provider. This basic widget type called provider is used to provide our state value, but if we have any state change, it will not update the change. It is simply used to provide the state value. So first, we need to create a model. So we will come to our lib folder and create a new file called models.dart, and then I'll create a class called text font size, and I'll provide it with the int font size field, and I'll give it a setter and getter type or methods or functions. So we'll return an integer get font size, and this will return font size, and the set method will set font size to an int value, and this will be this dot font size equals value. Let's actually put this over here, and let me create a constructor so that I can give it an initial value. So my text font size will take a named constructor, this dot font size, and now we can come to our main.dart file, and we will lift our app state to one of the widget tree where its child trees or its child nodes can be able to access that state or model. In this case, the best place to lift our state is on my home page, where I can create a new widget called provider and provide it with the model type, which is text font size. No, actually, is it? Let's check it here. Yes, text font size. Then we need to import that class. Then we will come here, open a bracket here, close. We need also to import the provider package. For that, we need to go to our pubspec YAML file and provide the dependency and download it. Once it is downloaded, we can come back to our main.dart file and import our package. Then we need to use the build name parameter to provide or to create our object for our model using text font size, and we will use font size to provide it an initial value, and we don't need child here, we only need the context. So we have to change the build to create, so that was the error. Then we need to provide it the material app closing bracket here, and once we have that, the next step is to consume this model, which is my text font model. So for that, we don't need a stateful widget anymore, so we have to change this to a stateless widget. So let me delete this, change this to stateless widget, and fix the name to homepage and remove the underscore. Then we don't need a state field anymore, and we need also to delete this values text size, which is the state field, and this as well, because we're going to replace it with our getter method from our model class, and we don't need the setState method called in here. Since we know that this provider widget is not going to update any state, the only thing that we can do is provide the value, the initial value, to our text widget. So our text widget will consume that widget. So we need to wrap this text widget with the consumer widget from our provider class, consumer. Then it needs the name of the type or the state, font size. So our consumer widget also need to call the build name parameter. It will call the function that takes in the parameter context, value, and child. The value is the only parameter that we're going to use to access our state model. So this is going to return our text widget. So I'm going to return our text widget, and let's remove that and create a curly brace here. Open a curly brace and close it over here, and we need a semicolon here. Once we have that, let's give it an initial value here. So our initial value is to get the model initial value. So I also need to wrap this in a consumer widget because it's consuming the model, and it will take builder context, value, and child, and this is gonna wrap the slider, and it returns the slider. Then we need to close the brace over here. So now we can provide it with the, so I made a mistake here, it has to be consumer, and that takes in text font size model or type. So over here for value, we're going to use the value.getFont size. Since it's saying that the value has to be a double, we have to go back to our model and modify this type to double, as well as this one, double, and this also double. Save this back to my main.dart, and we also need to provide that initial value to my label name parameter dot get font, and I'll leave the onChange method as it is because we know that the provider widget from our provider package doesn't update state change. So we will save this, format our code, and let's run it. It seems that I'm missing or I didn't provide my font size here, so I'm going to use value.get font size. Now we can save it or restart it by pressing that. Go back to our emulator, and as you can see, there's no error. Our application is running. So if I try to update the size, or if I try to move the slider, it's not changing or making any change here because the provider widget can only provide the initial value. It is not going to update the state widget. So the value of our string is going to stay as it is. For example, if I change this to, let's say, 30, and I save the program, or let me rerun it. As you can see, my text font size has changed, but if I try to update it, nothing is going to happen. So our next step is to use the ChangeNotifierProvider widget. So we have seen how to use the provider type and the provider package, which is used only to provide the initial value of our model or our state class. But if that value changes, we need to be able to update to our user interface. So this change needs to be reflected on our user interface. For that, we have to use a different provider type called ChangeNotifierProvider. Before that, we need to go to our model class and we need to make some changes. That is, we need to use the ChangeNotifierProvider provider class so that we can be able to notify our state that there is a change in a state. We will use a mixin with and use the change notifier class, and that will import a library, but this is not the right one. We have to use foundation. Then anytime there's a change in the state, we need to notify our consumers or anyone who's using the state. So for that, I'm gonna change this to a curly brace, and I'll open another curly brace. After, actually not the set, I will change the set state only. So the change is going to be reflected here. So I'm going to do notify change listener. So I'm going to call the notify change listener function. I also need to call it in here as well, notify change listener method or function. Now I will go back to my main class, and I need to change the type over here from provider to ChangeNotifierProvider. So it will take the same state, which is text font. It will create, just like the provider type, it will create the object or the type, and then anyone who's consuming this object or state will be notified that there is a change in state so that they can rebuild their user interface or their widgets. So the benefit in here is that the only UIs or widgets that are going to be rebuilt are those that are encapsulated within the consumer widget. So previously we have used the set state widget, but the set state widget was rebuilding the entire application, which is not an efficient way of managing a state, because if the application is very large, it will slow down the user experience. So by using provider, we actually only rebuild selected widgets that are encapsulated within a consumer widget. In this case, the text widget. So anytime there's a font value change, it will be rebuilt. And also the slider widget. Anytime there is a font change, the slider value will be updated, and the slider knob will move to a new position. So we don't need to make any change over here. So everything stays as it is. The only thing that we changed was that the ChangeNotifierProvider widget over here. So we will save this, or we can rerun it. But one thing we forgot was to reflect the change whenever there is an onChange function call here. So we need to update our font size whenever we move our slider. So we will come over here and use value that sets font size equals to val. And also we need to go to our model class and fix this problem over here. We don't need to call a notifier listener. All we have to do is just, on our getter method, is just return the font size. So let's rebuild it again. So once we have that, we can go back to our slider. So we see that we have 30 over here. We will change it to 12. Save this and reload it. Go back to our app. We can move. Now, as you can see, when we move our slider knob, the change is reflected. We can fix this decimal value by coming to our label and using .round function. Then let's go back to our app. Now, as you can see, we only have integer, and the font size is updated when we move our slider. Up to now, we have looked at how to provide a single state or model to our application. But what if we have multiple states? In this case, we need to use the MultiProvider widget from the provider package. First, let me change or add some widgets to my application. I'm going to add a row model after my consumer widget. So inside the row widget, I'm going to add a switch widget, and this will take for now, let's make it true, and let's put a anonymous function here. and it will take a value. Then we need a text after the switch widget. So that text is going to be text. So it might be light or dark theme, and I'm gonna give it a style. The next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add a file here, a new file that contains constant theme data values. That is a light or a dark theme values for my entire application. So I'm gonna copy this. I'm not gonna type everything in here. I found it online. So let's call it constant dot dart, and I'll paste this in here. So this is a static class. What it does is it creates theme values, and we assign it to our theme data widget, and we use the constant class. So every data inside this class is static by value, so that way we don't need to instantiate it. Once we have this, we'll go back to our, I think we have a problem here. We forgot to add a bracket. We need to also add an additional bracket here and save it. And we need also a closing bracket. And now let's check if our theme class is working or not. So I'm going to delete this part and change it to light theme using the constant class. So I'm going to add constant dot light theme. I think we need to import the constant dot dart class light theme. So if I save this, I should be able to see a light theme, but I'm passing the boundaries of my screen here because I'm using 3/4 of the height of the entire device for my text. So I'm going to change it to 2/4 or half. And let's save this, go back. As you can see, now we have two widgets. One of them can change the font size for the text at the top, and the next one is to switch between the dark and the light theme. Now first, for now, we only set it to true, so it doesn't show anything. But what we're going to do is we're going to create a state class for the switch value. So we're going to come to our model class, and we're going to need to create a theme style class. So class theme style bool class with the notifier, change notifier, and I'm going to have a boolean field. Let me call it theme value, and I'm going to use a constructor to initialize the initial value. So this dot theme value. Then I need a boolean getter method that gets the theme value, and it returns this dot theme value. And I need a setter method, set theme value, and it takes in a boolean value, and this dot theme value is going to set to value. Then it will notify the user. So now we have our state class or model class. Then we'll go back to our main .dart file. What we're going to do is we're going to use the MultiProvider widget from the provider package. So the best place to lift our state is not here because our theme is inside the material app. So what we're going to do is let's lift our state above the material app widget. So what I'm going to do is delete this part and change it to my home page, and I'm going to create a new widget over here, and I'm going to use MultiProvider. The MultiProvider will take in a provider named parameter called provider. Inside here, we will define our change notifier provider for our text font size, and we will create a context and initialize our object or state, that is text font size, and that will be initial value will be 12. And the next one is going to be a change notifier provider for our theme style. Let's check out the model name, theme style bool, and we will create our context theme style boolean, and this will take a theme value. For now, let's set it to true. We will use our theme style data type or state on our material app widget. So we will consume it here. So to consume it, we will create a widget called consumer. So this consumer is providing a theme style boolean, and we need to create a builder, and this builder is going to return a material app, and then I'm going to change this to return, and we do need a semicolon here, and we don't need this arrow sign. And now our theme value will be updated using the value from our theme value state, theme value boolean state. So we get the theme value, then we check if it is true. If it is true, what we're going to do is call the constant dot dark theme. Otherwise, we call the constant dot light theme. The rest of the code stays as it is. For that is, if you are using the text font, nothing is changed. But the only thing that we need to change in here is inside the switch widget, where we need to consume the theme value bool state. So we're gonna wrap it inside a consumer widget, and that is theme. And then inside here, we also need to have a builder that is returning a switch widget. Then over here, let's format this. So we are returning a switch widget. That switch widget is going to take the value of value.get theme value. Then if there's any change, for example, if we move the toggle on the switch widget, then in this case we have to update use our switch state by using value.set value to val. Then we need to save this. Now we can go back to our app. As you can see, it's already dark, and I can increase the font size. If I switch, it will be light, and so on. As you can see over here, this is not the right way to handle the theme value. So we will need to use a different provider widget called ProxyProvider in order to deal with a dependent state. In this case, the theme value is dependent upon the state of our switch. If our switch is true, we change the theme to dark theme. If it is light, we change it to light theme. I mean, if it is false, we change it to a light theme. So in this case, we need to create a class that depends on the theme style bool state. In order to do that, we need to use the ProxyProvider widget from the provider package, and we will see that next. So now, instead of putting a conditional statement over here, we can create a state that returns theme data. So first, we create a state that returns a theme data using the ProxyProvider widget from the provider package. So first, I'm going to create a model. I'll keep the other ones as they are, and I'll come up here and create a new model, and I'll call it class my team. So this model is going to return a team data, but it will take in a Boolean value because it is, like I said, it is dependent on one of the state or the models, in this case the team style bool model. So for that, I will create a field here called current state, and then I'll need a constructor to initialize this state, this dot current state. Then I need to return, based on this current state, I need to return a team. So I'll create a team data method that is called get team data, and if the current state is true, we're going to return constant dot dark team. Otherwise, I will return constants dot light team. So now we have this state. We don't need to, use mixin to extend the ChangeNotifier class. So anytime there's a change in here, the result that comes from this methods depend upon the value of our current state. So let's save this and go back to our main.dart class, and let's delete. And before we delete it, we need to provide our state. So I'm going to use ProxyProvider, and I will take in the dependency, which is the first value is going to be the dependency, in this case team style boolean. Then the class or the object that is the dependency and the dependent. So in here we have the dependent. Then we will open a bracket and we call the update named parameter to create our object, my team object, which will initialize the current state using value and get team. Then once we have this, we will come to our child named parameter, which is inside the MultiProvider widget. We need to change this from team style bool to my team. Then we need to grab the value of my team using value dot get team data. And on our switch widget, this will stay as it is because we are consuming the team value. And when we toggle the switch button, the team style boolean state will change value and it will be updated. And once this is updated, my dependent state, which is my team, will return a new value. So that is a new team. So if I save this, and as you can see, we have a dark team. So if I switch, it will be light team. This way we avoided, adding additional code over here, and also made it easy to test without, cluttering the team name parameter with the conditional statement.